Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were kind of locked in, and I started writing music just out of boredom and frustration with politics and current events and all that stuff. So we were working at that for a while, and finally got a real band going, and just got together, practiced for a while, wrote some songs, and here we are. Just kind of like a way to vent some frustrations and to play some fast, aggressive music and get some demons out.
Yeah. I think I sort of coerced Justin into asking me to like come play one day with Ian and John, and then it's all history.
That was a soft coercion.
I definitely think there is a bit of an agenda in everything that we write, at least lyrically. I think we all have a pretty solid stance on, things being in a state of chaos right now and not being okay with it. And, I think a lot of what we talk about is making sure that we surround ourselves and build a community that's equitable and equal. You have to be equitable to be equal. Yeah,
I think that kind of the whole nucleus of this whole project was being frustrated about politics. It was towards the end of the Trump presidency, and I just get really sick of watching people being conned and ripped off by just shameless grifters. And it was something that fired me up a lot. Again, this is the beginning of the pandemic, so we had a lot of COVID denial and a lot of bad actors just manipulating otherwise well-meaning people for political purposes. And I just think it's really sick, and it made me personally sick. And I felt like I just needed an outlet for it, just so I wasn't, bitching at my wife constantly about how bad everything was. So I started writing some like angry music, and then, it kind of took it from there. But like Rachel said, I think we all share we're all very progressive, socially and politically, and we believe in inequality and making sure that, nobody's pushed out for arbitrary reasons and nobody's manipulated unfairly. And we just want people to stop being shitty and be a little cooler. And that's kind of the idea.
I remember specifically driving in the car with my dad. We were listening to Dracula by White Zombie.
By Rob Zombie.
Oh, excuse me. By Rob Zombie. That's not a White Zombie song?
No, it's Rob Zombie.
All right, my bad. I was like 6 at the time. And I grew up like listening to metal, and then I hit middle school and saw kids wearing like Dead Kennedy shirts and stuff. I was like, oh, what's this? And kind of looking into the more political punk arena, and was like, wow, okay. Like I've always had a lot of feelings, and I've never really known how to piece them together. And then here's this music and these bands putting all of this content out that is exactly how I think. And then I just think it's grown from there.
Yeah, I was kind of lucky. I grew up in California, and the apartment complex I lived in were a bunch of skateboarders there. So I would hang out with the older skateboarders, and they'd always play all the like California punk music in the '80s. So kind of grew up on that. The first, I told these guys a couple weeks ago, like the first 2 cassettes I ever bought when I like saved up my allowance and went to Tower Records. I got MC Hammer's first album, and I got Social Distortion, Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell. So kind of grew up on like listening to punk music, but it wasn't really a central focus of mine until I was a teenager. When I moved to Florida, probably about 13, some friends played Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, and Subhumans EP/LP, and that like turned a switch on in my head, and I was like, okay, that's so it's what 26 years later or something like that.
My earliest musical memories definitely were from my late father. He was a sound engineer in the 70s, and a musician, bass player, guitarist, flutist, multi-instrumentalist. So he shared with me, he was into a lot of like prog and stuff back then. So King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King is probably the first like album I ever remember really listening to, probably as like a 5-year-old sitting there, my dad would pop it on. Extreme music and punk and stuff, though, again, also from my dad, randomly one day. I had been getting into kind of the alternative stuff at the time when I was like in 3rd, 4th grade, like what was coming out, like Silverchair and Bush and all that, and I got a little bit Metallica. But my dad got me into the more extreme stuff, ironically. He came home one night with a copy of Morbid Angel Covenant. Randomly, he's like, "Oh, check this out. They're from Tampa." So that got me into the more extreme metal stuff. But punk just was obviously parallel to that. I think some of the Bad Religion, No Effects type stuff, and the Dead Kennedys, the Misfits, and all that kind of stuff, just kind of came along with it because it's all intertwined.
Justin and I do a majority of the lyrical writing, and I think it's just every song brings a different topic that we want to discuss, and I'm really passionate about how particularly women, non-binary people are seen as outcasts and having opinions that sort of deterred from the normal tends to cast you out. Yeah, basically, I personally like to write about how difficult it is to be a person that is outside of the box, whether that be, color of your skin, your economic background, who you love, like whatever. Yeah.
I don't want to punch down either with lyrics. I think that it's really easy to just like slam on Trump supporters and, people that have all sorts of ideas that we view as being absolute garbage. And like I mentioned before, I think that a lot of these people are manipulated a lot of times. And these are otherwise well-meaning, good people that generally you would agree with on a lot of different topics, but they're maybe not as critical when they consume news. They're maybe more easily swayed by not having enough information. So I try to be a little bit like empathetic when I'm addressing those topics. I never want to punch down, and I never want to take the people who are already down at the bottom of the totem pole and just push them down further. So I try and keep that in mind. I work with frustrations that I have and things that kind of make me angry or make me annoyed, and then I try and look at it from different viewpoints and hopefully insert a little bit of humor in there whenever possible. So, or at least sarcasm in lieu of. I think that I really love to see young kids at shows. I love to see like a new generation of people in the punk scene, or just people coming to shows and watching bands. Because I know what it was like for me when I was a lot younger, and I looked up to a lot of bands that I would go see. I would listen to the lyrics, I would think about the lyrical themes, and it did play a big role in how I view the world, and it kind of created the mindset that carried me into adulthood as well. So I think it would be a bit of a tall order for me to say we want to influence the minds of young kids, but I want to have at least some sort of like a positive voice there, so that if people are looking for that kind of thing and they want to listen to bands that they can connect with or that they can relate to the lyrics, I want to have something other than just this sucks, screw that, whatever. So I guess that would be it. I don't think we're going to change anyone's minds, but hopefully we can get people fired up a little bit and maybe reinforce what they already feel, or just give them a different perspective. Hopefully. That's, again, tall order, but maybe.
Justin does a good job with lyrical and philosophical points, and so musically I hope they really enjoy hard, fast, somewhat heavy, somewhat virtuistic here and there, guitars.
Forgot to mention the riffs. We hope that people like the riffs.
Just we're a guitar band. We're a riff band. I mean, say what you will. We have a lot of classic rock influence, so we want that to be taken away as well. And the sick vocal stylings of Rachel here. She's just so aggro. It's great. And so musically, just.
I think for me specifically, giving younger girls and women someone to look at from a perspective of not always being delicate and being loud and taking up space, and I still feel like what I have to say is very constructive, even though it sounds angry. And I think it's pretty cool to be able to fill a lot of different roles. Like, I am a professional, I have a daughter, I'm married, and then I have this other side of me that people don't expect. And I think particularly when I see younger people coming to shows, like Justin said, it's really humbling for me and really exciting and fueling to me when girls in particular are like, "Whoa, I didn't know like you could sound like that." It's like, yeah, so could you. Or you don't have to sound like that. You know, you can be anywhere on the spectrum, and I'm really fond of that in this project. Like, I'm given the space to have those tender moments of being a mom and dealing with the emotions of that, or just being a woman and dealing with the things about being a woman. And I want girls to know that there are spaces for them where they will be supported in that capacity. And I think it's cool that I'm in a band with a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, that's my girl, like, she's okay. And I want other girls to see that too.
Can you turn me down a little? This song is for Ron DeSantis. Drink up, baby.